It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
I'm not a Republican, but if I was, I would be extremely concerned about censorship in social media, which is a real thing. Censorship of Republican ideas and conservative ideas is absolutely a real thing. It's not just real, it's accepted as being the right thing to do by certain organizations. I mean, they've been caught on camera and hidden camera talking about the ways that you can silence conservative voices. For sure, conservatives are being discriminated against on social media by social media platforms. And even if you're not banning them from those platforms, if you're shadow banning them, if you're making it very difficult for people to find them, which is real. It's a real thing that they do. Like if you have a post on social media, it doesn't just go up in chronological order anymore. Now it's affected by an algorithm. They can, in certain social media platforms, use that algorithm to discriminate. So they can decide, hey, this guy keeps chirping on and on about Hillary Clinton's war crimes and all this. We don't need this guy around, okay? We don't need this guy and all of his right-wing bolt and all his Make America Great Again bolts. We'll shadow ban him. And so they can shove you into this category where it's very difficult to find your page. And it's very difficult for you to show up. And a lot of people have seen their views drop drastically. There's a woman named Megan Murphy. Well, on Twitter, she wrote, "A man is never a woman." They told her she has to take down that tweet. So you know what she did? She made a screenshot of it. She took down that tweet, and then she posted a picture of the screenshot. And then they banned her for life. You know who's not banned for life? O.J. Simpson. Double homicide, armed kidnapping. He's fine. But this lady who's just said a man is never a woman, which biologically is correct.
Johnny and the Professor.
It's another exciting episode of Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and Prince Harry.
Poor Prince Harry.
Right, poor guy. Oh, he's so noble.
Our guest today is Alonzo Rachel, internet personality and head of and drummer of 20 Pound Sledge, which is a really good Christian rock band. And so it's good to have you here, Zoe. How are you doing today?
Oh, groovy, man. Thanks for having me on.
So it's always a pleasure. I thought we'd start today. There's so many crazy things going on in this country right now, but I realized last time I had you on, I don't think I asked a question because obviously impeachment's on a lot of people's minds right now. I don't think I ever asked you, what do you think of the President of the United States?
What do I think of him?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to vote for him again.
Yeah, but, I think it's really strange. We talked about this, Johnny and I, many times, both of us, when I didn't support his candidacy because I was hoping, that he was such an odd duck and I didn't know. But when it came right down in the end of it, I'm sitting there looking at the ballot ready to send it in. I actually, though it's not nobody's business, I'll say it anyway, I actually voted for Donald Trump. I was thinking I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's the embodiment of, corrupt politician.
Vote for Donald Trump. In the primary, he wasn't my first pick. And it was for a host of reasons that would probably bore the snot out of everybody. But, because I think, we've heard it all before, especially, with it just being grinded out so much by the Never Trumpers and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But, when it came down to it, like even before the primaries wrapped up, I was starting to get, I had to question myself, like, why is it feasible or plausible that this guy could turn around? Because he's doing what we've been talking about. He's tapped into the culture. The guy was a reality TV show star, and that right there was something that's big in the culture. He took that whole process and brought it into his reality TV show expertise. He almost like ran it like a reality TV show, right? And it was effective because he had that cultural connection to do that with. And so in that, I can see, yeah, man, he knows the importance of not just being a political representative. He's a cultural representative too. And I think a lot of conservatives, like Never Trumpers and stuff like that, I think they took that for granted. They're really not seeing the importance of tapping into the culture to get political stuff done the way liberals do. And Clavin and I, we started back on, we connected on PJTV back in 2009. And, and one of the reasons why we were brought on board was because that was the things that we've been talking about for so long is the cultural connection, between us and like Breitbart, same thing. As Breitbart would say, politics is downstream from the culture.
That's right.
And, so we've seen the importance of making this cultural connection And the tools, and even long before that, the Lord had already talked about it. The Lord has already given the instruction on how to do this. He says, look, you guys are children of the light. You guys get it. Those who get it, it's great that you get it. Now, can you sell it? It's the strange thing is that the children of the age, the ones who don't get it, are the ones who do get how to sell their lie, though. So it's like you need to know how to tap into that and use the tools that they're using, not to mislead people, but use the tools that they're leading to lead them to the truth. But that's what we need to be trying to do. Get in the way. See the things that, and what they're doing is plain as day. You can see it, it's plain as day, but there needs to be the effort to go ahead and do it. And it's like we're waiting, conservatives, for all the talk that, too many conservatives say about government's not the answer, it's the problem. But it's always, well, we need a person of integrity to go into office. Like, okay, well, you're saying that government's the answer then, because it's always like assume that some political candidate with a backbone is going to go in there and change everything. It's like, well, not exactly. That's like rare. We got to put our boots on the ground. We got to do something. We have to make our stand in the culture to make our political representation more stable.
Johnny and I have talked about this in the past, that the one thing that Donald Trump seems to have taught the Republican Party to do is actually fight back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does strike me that, that when it's got to the point now, I mean, we'll joke, and if somebody called me, a misogynistic bigot, whatever, Johnny does that periodically just to be funny, I almost wear it as a badge of honor now, because the people that say it are people whose opinions aren't worth anything, because they don't believe in anything but themselves. There's an incredible level of vanity on the left, and I think it's destroying the culture to some way, because people are of this opinion that they are everything revolves around them. It's all me.
And that's the thing that's been promoted in the culture for a long time. And you got to believe in yourself, right? Everything's, you got to believe in yourself, and and the thing is when you're constantly believing in yourself, it doesn't leave much room to believe in God. And we believe in these, and we're believing in ourselves, and the thoughts that we have are going to be wrong thoughts. So we put a lot of stake in those thoughts. And the Word of God says, yeah, there's a way that seems right to a man, but his way leads to death. And the thing is that we're just eating ourselves. But that's what we've been taught. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to believe. We're supposed to be so proud of everything that we're doing. Pride is like the first sin. Pride goes before destruction. We're not taught to be grateful. Humility, no, we got to go out there and we got to, make a name for ourselves. And that's one of the, even in the Word of God, it's like telling you, the Babylonians, they wanted to go, and make a name for themselves and build a tower. That was what they prefaced it with. Got to make a name for themselves. That's what people out there trying to do now. They'll do anything to get on YouTube to get 1 million views. They want to make a name for themselves. And it's all about you, just like you said, man. It's all about me. It's all about my pride. It's all about believing in myself, and all these things that are they're promoted in the culture. And liberals have done this, and it can't be for us just about we got to fight back. But the thing is how did we get here where we have to where we're on the ropes and trying to fight back? It's like it shouldn't have even gotten to this point. We saw the formula a long time ago. Why are we here?
I've always thought it was just kind of the cowardice of the Republican Party and not wanting to be called names. They just were willing to say, we'll do the high ground. I've made the joke, the old Batman joke, that the Republicans are a cowardly and superstitious lot because they hate being called bad names, and they run when they do it. Because it seems to me that, and therefore they let it down a lot. I mean, where did we get from Ronald Reagan, Morning in America, to Barack Obama? You didn't build that, we built it, and that the country does everything, and that you're, meaningless against the state. And yet you're supposed to be, your importance is so great that you can choose your gender, your species, whatever, and that makes you, just by your belief, that makes it reality. I mean, that's magic. That's magic-y stuff, man. I can change reality by how I believe.
Right. So, that's what they're motivated by. They're motivated. I talk about this in my book, A Solid Right Cross. Trying to reason with them, that's just not their language. They're driven by imagination. That's the language that they speak. Everything that they believe is imagination. Everything. And they don't like their reality messed with. But, with the Republican Party, there was a time when the Republican Party was founded, the Republican Party was ready to get down.
Oh, I know.
That we weren't afraid of, the Republican Party wasn't afraid back then. They're not even afraid to go to war. And, because the Democrats, they felt, just like they do today, they felt back then, they felt entitled. It's like, this is what we have a right to. We believe that we have a right to this, and we don't care who it costs. We don't care if somebody's going to have to forfeit their freedom for what it is that we want. And Democrats are the same way today. And Republicans back then said, no, you don't. You're not doing that no more, right? So, but Republicans now, it's like, oh no, if I do this, I'm going to lose my friends on Facebook, or if I do this, I'm not going to have a Hollywood career if I do this. There's, so they have to try to either find some other contingencies or try to make their living in the world that liberals create for them, and they have to abide by that and kowtow to that, and too much of the Republican Party just doesn't have what the Republican Party was made of when the Republican Party was established.
I wonder why. I mean, I'm trying to think of what actually changed. Has it just been a war of attrition ever since, Johnson, of course, with the war on poverty, making, the whole alleged, shift that the Democrats lie about, that the bigotry went onto the Republican side after leaving them, even though they still carry, as far as I can tell, the only people truly concerned with race in this country are Democrats. I mean, most conservatives I meet don't care what color you are. And again, Martin Luther King holiday was, very recently. And yet I often wonder, would Martin Luther King, I don't think he could make his speeches for the Democrats these days. They'd be booing him off the stage.
Oh, yeah. He'd definitely be charged with hate speech today. I just read on Martin Luther King, because I myself just got a video banned from Facebook, and Facebook sent me a notification charging me with hate speech because of my video that was called The Acceptable Politics of Jesus Being Okay with Gay. So for Martin Luther King Day, I was like, okay, well, this is what there's not a lot published, from Martin Luther King concerning homosexuality, but it's one of those things where Martin Luther King did address it, and he made his perspective on it so clear that you can't mistake it. So what Martin Luther King addressed it as a problem, right? It's not a good habit, so he uses these words that would definitely be construed as hate speech
these days. It is amazing that you do, and it wouldn't even have been an issue, because if you think about the 1960s, in the 1960s, homosexuality was considered deviant sexuality and was a mental disorder. Remember, that doesn't change until the late 1970s, when they start redefining the parameters on it. Jesus would be in favor of people who were bipolar. No, he'd want them to go get help. And I always looked at that when I've heard people on the right make the same comment you have, and I'm not a deeply religious man, but I have studied the scriptures, and Jesus doesn't say go and keep sinning. He says go and sin no more. I mean, it's okay. You can be, again, that's the thing, people can do sinful things, but if you correct the behavior. But see, that's the argument now, is that the left will tell you, oh, well, you don't have to correct the behavior is fine. If you think you're a man, just say you're a man. If you think you're a woman, just say you're a woman. If I think I'm a ring-tailed sloth, I guess I'm a ring-tailed sloth today. If I want to be that, then I can hang upside down on branches and move very slowly. I mean, it's insane. No concept of reality on the left at all.
Right, and it is insane. That's the thing about it, and just like you said, it was addressed as a mental disorder. And Dr. Martin Luther King did tell the person who was asking, because there was a person who was asking Dr. Martin Luther King, what is your stance on it? Because I'm struggling with it. Person asked Dr. It's like, wait a minute, nowadays you can't be a homosexual and go ask a Christian for counsel. You can't do that. So this person is going to Dr. Martin Luther King, a man of God, and asking his counsel on this. And everything about that would lead to Dr. Martin Luther King being a hater and being charged with hate speech. The Democrats, they hold Dr. Martin Luther King as if they're the ones who own him, and they're the champions for him, but they're the ones who killed him. He was harassed in states that were run by Democrats, in towns that were run by Democrats, bullied by Democrats, and so on and so forth, jailed by them, and ultimately killed by them. And even the Word of God spells this out to us. It says, the prophets were killed by your father, and then you guys turn around and act like you're the ones who are worthy to make their tombs and their memorabilia and stuff like that. But your fathers are the ones who killed them. It's
interesting because, again, that whole stage, the Democrats of today, the left of the day, they don't like to look back at their history at all, because their history is filled with slavery and Jim Crow and bigotry and segregation. And yet along comes the big lie that, oh, well, that ended in the 1960s and we all became part of the civil rights movement. Not, including the fact that the president that actually did the most for civil rights is probably Dwight D. Eisenhower. He's the one that actually started desegregating schools. He's the one that officially enforced the desegregation of the military. I mean, Truman put it in motion, but Eisenhower was the one who did it. And I would think it's really strange. It's this weird transference idea, using psychological terms, good Sigmund Freud stuff, that they just say, oh, well, you're that way now, and we're the good guys, and we'll just ignore it. So now you're the bigots, and now you're the haters, and we're the one that like. Yet every time a person is looked upon by the left, it's based on their skin color, their gender, their identity.
Yeah, and which is totally antithetical to what Dr. King was talking about. Okay?
Exactly.
What about judging folks for their character, instead of like being so hung up on their skin color, And the left, they can't seem to process that. But once again, man, it's that imagination land that I'm talking about. They think that they're the champions for Dr. Martin Luther King, while in reality, they have no idea what he was talking about.
What's your opinion on some of these people on the left talking about reparations? What's your opinion on that?
Once again, man, it's people seeking fulfillment and reparations, and you have, for the black community, man, this is engineered. This isn't some innate thing, with the black community, man, where it's like, we want reparations and all that sort of stuff, man. That's programming. That's all programming. And the Democrats are the engineers of that programming. The Democrats are the ones, like say, for instance, with the whole 40 acre and a mule thing. Well, black folks were going to get those reparations. The 40 acres and a mule, Special Field Order number 15 that Abraham Lincoln approved. Mm-hmm. So, okay, yeah, you're going to get your 40 acres and a mule. Well, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by a Democrat,
mm-hmm.
And then Johnson comes in and cancels the whole thing. Johnson was a Democrat. So Democrats are the reasons why we didn't get those, I shouldn't say we, because I wasn't there. The thing is, the Democrats took that and then they programmed the black community to constantly feel like the black community is owed. You're being done dirty by the Republicans. Vote for us because you can trust us. It's the same tactics of the serpent in the garden. Cause Adam and Eve to distrust God, because Satan is the accuser. I'm going to make an accusation against God. You're going to distrust him, and you're going to trust me by default. That's how it works. Democrats are of their father the devil. The sins of their father they will do. And that's exactly how they do it today, constantly accusing. So black people feel like they're owed these reparations because of this social engineering, because of this constant indoctrination. But, for the black community, it's to be able to break that spell, to get them to realize there's no fulfillment in that. Trust me, there's no fulfillment in it. And the black community, we consider ourselves God-fearing people, but all you got to do is look in the story of Exodus and see how that turns out. It ain't going to work out, because when the Israelites were led out of Egypt, they got reparations. All the Egyptians gave them all of their possessions. They were like, look, we're happy to see y'all leave. Just stop messing with us. We're tired of your God messing with us. It's like, look, take our gold, take our silver, take it all. The Israelites, they left wealthy. What happened as soon as they got out there in the wilderness? We want to go back. We would trade all this wealth that we have just for some free fish, because when we were slaves, we had meat and we had fish. All of a sudden, they remembered all these imaginary good things that they had when they were slaves, when before that they were crying out to God for all the oppression. So now we've seen that happen with blacks today. Crying out because of the oppression. Republicans came in, like Moses, came in and liberated them. And then what did they do? Went right back to the Democrat Party. So we can see that play out even in Exodus. It's not going to work. All you got is what will work, though, is just getting in the way of the program of the Democrat Party. It's not like this innate thing with the black community. The black community is targeted, because just let me, if I can say this really quick. Black community is only like 13% of the population, and the Democrats have engineered it to be that way, to make us a manageable voter stock. However, this small population has a big influence over the rest of the country. And the Democrats are dependent on the plight of the black community that they imposed on the black community in the first place. They're dependent on that to control the perspective of the rest of the population, whether it's gun control, illegal immigration, gay marriage, taxation, regulations, all that sort of stuff. They use black people, push that through. make people feel guilty about what happened to black people, and then they use that to push through these policies. That's why the black community is so important to the Democrat Party.
So what do you think about the information that seems to be that there's been a shift in the black vote? I mean, we're hearing 20, 30+% are maybe going toward Trump now.
We got to be careful with that because, just like you said, they're going towards Trump. That don't mean that they were going towards conservatives, because this has happened before. You know, the black community, they loved Lincoln as much as the black community they love Trump. We love, black folks love Lincoln, but went back to the Democrat Party shortly after. So it's like, we get excited about this shift. It's like that shift can swing back the other way with devastating results. Conservatives have to be really careful because, like just the other day, because conservatives, they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. They're doing it now. Thank God, after the gun rally that they had, for violence, excellent. But the day right after that, man, after, I see a parade of their commemorating of the Confederacy. They're walking around, they're going down the street, and they got their Confederate battle flags. And I'm like, right there is why you're going to have more black folks go right back to the Democrat Party. They're going to go right back. And the blacks that are going to be coming up after them, who are going to be coming in the voting age, they're going to see that stuff. They're going to be like, whoa, am I going to the right place with all these racists and stuff like that? And those who are carrying the Confederate battle flag are going to be like, no, it's not about racism, it's about history. And I'm like, okay, you're carrying around the Confederate battle flag, all right? Number one, it's not your flag. That's the Democrat flag. The Democrats are the ones who created that flag. But you, a Republican, are waving around the Democrat flag. That makes no sense.
It does.
These people don't even know their history, right? They're waving around, and in this parade, I'm seeing them carry around the different variations of the Confederate battle flag. The blood-stained banner, the stainless banner, right? It's like, dude, do you even know why the stainless banner was created? When Williams made that flag, his inspiration for the Confederate battle flag in the white field was to represent the heaven-ordained supremacy of the white man over the Negro. But you're carrying around that flag. You're carrying around the Democrats' flag, who made the Constitution of the Confederate States to go against the U.S. Constitution. And in the Constitution of the Confederate States, it gives in clear language that you can force blacks into slavery against due process of law. It's like these people try to say it has nothing to do with slavery. Say, I'm sorry, yes it does. And it's the Democrats' flag. And that's why it's stuff like that is why Republicans and conservatives will lose the black vote in short order and are the reason why people think that the party switched sides.
I'd like to argue with you on it, but I don't think I can. You have a good point to it, is that, I mean, I don't underestimate the Republicans' ability to screw up things, when they're, to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, defeat from the jaws of victory. Let me say it the right way. Mm-hmm. Is there anything about the upcoming 2020 election that has you encouraged at this point?
Man, I tell you what, all I know is that God is good. But in terms of encourage, I mean, it's Trump is blessed, man, to be able to just keep on trucking despite everything that they're trying to throw at him. It's like the Lord is just getting them through. When you see that, Democrats, what all they got, I'm encouraged by what's happening, but I'm discouraged by whether people can really see it or not. I don't really doubt that Trump is going to win. But when you look at Democrats and all they've got is trying to go on with this impeachment thing, that's not new. We see the formula. We see what's going on. Like, all you guys have is this, and you guys can't even keep it consistent with your so-called stance of diversity about what it is that you're doing. Where you've gotten rid of Kamala Harris. It's like, what happened to your diversity? It's like you could have had a woman of color as president. What happened to your diversity? You guys let shouldn't you guys sidestep and let Cory Booker have the nomination? You should let him have it. Isn't he entitled to it?
Yeah, well, that'd be the argument.
You know what I'm saying? It's like that's you guys' that's your premise. But that's looking at Democrats in terms of encouragement with with what Trump is doing. The jobs coming back, unemployment being the lowest that it's ever been. When we're able to have discussions with leaders of these other nations, when you're able to come to the table and just have these forward-moving conversations, sometimes they go forward, sometimes they backslide. But at least he's able to have the conversation with them, and without being a lapdog. for them. It's like, look, I'm going to come to the table, as basically the leader of the free world, leading from the front instead of leading from behind. Those things are encouraging.
Tell us about what's going on with your band and what projects you're working on so we can find out what's new in your world.
My website is bronzeserpentmedia.com. Just think John 3:14, 3:16. My political and social commentary is the Zoloft. It's my place for chuckle therapy against what the liberals are doing to the country. The Zopium Den, which is my anti-fuddy-duddy Bible study. We just go through the Bible chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and we see, the mind-blowing Word of God and what it is, how the Bible has warned us and given us the tools to deal. And then this is my music project, 20-Pound Sledge. It's my outlet to rock the gospel. So if anybody wants to come and check that out, that's all at my website, my book. And hopefully we'll be building on some more productions.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for being a great guest again.
Heck yeah, man. You guys rock, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Gonna take a break. More coming up on Johnny and the Professor.
This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
Victimhood has become almost a mental plague upon Black America in particular, because that word racism is being so overused that society is becoming desensitized to it, and we actually can't even recognize it when it actually exists. We think everything is racist. Things that used to be normal conflicts between human beings, getting cut off while you're driving, having a bad correspondence in a grocery store, you should just brush it off, shrug it off, and move on with your day. Now people are crying and making videos and pleading on Facebook to say, look what I experienced today. It's something bigger that's happening in culture that needs to be addressed before it goes too far.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
It shows that the jokes are on the jokesters and the lies are on the liberals. And it also indicates that TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, is an addiction because results don't matter. It's all about Trump Derangement Syndrome. The media TDS addicts, they show no signs of recovery. They are in a hole and they keep digging and they can't get out. That's what this illustrates, and it's sad, and now we know that they are incapable of being able to do that.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
It's Johnny and the Professor, where we talk politics, and well, this segment, instead of pop culture, let's shift gears to just culture, right?
Our guest is Kobei Scott Whitney, a local individual here who I've known for quite a few years and is a well-known Buddhist monk in Grays Harbor.
Yes, infamous is the better description, yes.
Yeah, but we generally use that. That's generally a phrase that Johnny likes to have. He kind of like exclusive rights. He wants to be called infamous. So
right.
Okay.
We don't want to get into a competition of who's more infamous, and that's like an evil off. And I don't know if I want to be.
We've got great hair.
Yeah,
he and I.
Yes.
Yeah, you say, so you say.
Yeah. I gotta get mine polished pretty soon.
So, Scott, I thought we'd have you in and just talk about life in Grays Harbor and philosophy and ideas of what you see in the world around you. Share some of your wisdom with us.
Well, my wisdom and my patience are wearing thin these days. We're so polarized that you can't say anything without
right.
Offending,
right?
A
How
whole
dare
set
you?
Of people.
How dare you say that?
Yeah.
I agree. It is. I can't think of any time other than maybe in the 1960s that you had this level of polarization in the United States during the Vietnam era.
Yeah, that's the era I got on the CIA's watch list. I think I was in Madrid doing the California State study overseas. They had this big freak out when the Sputnik came up, that we were way behind the Russians and blah, blah, blah. So they funded all this stuff for science, but also for the study of foreign languages because they needed more people. So I benefited from that. We were all pulled into these students, we're all in early 20s, up to 40s maybe, and we were called in and we were told, don't go to any of those demonstrations about Vietnam, or what. We didn't know, but we went. So we went. That's all we needed. And Franco was still around, and he had this vicious, what are they called? Guardia Civil.
Yes.
His personal troops almost. They wear this funny, shiny hat.
Kind of the Franco's equivalent almost of the SS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where he got the idea, I think. So, gee, that was a long time ago, but that's when I first got famous as a radical. But remember that the word radical comes from the same word as radish, or in Spanish it's raíz.
Raíz.
So it means it means that I don't know what it means.
Well, it means if you eat it, it'll give you gas, I guess. I mean, so if you eat a radical, you'll end up with something and with gas. I mean, it's interesting. I always thought the root word had more to do with radius, but I'll have to look it up myself. The etymology of that'd be interesting. So you've been causing trouble now for Steve.
Yes.
Wow, that's I don't even have that much of a record for causing trouble. I'm impressed. So did you studied Spanish over there? Or
Yeah. Yeah, my original major was called Romance Languages. So it was when I was in Madrid. Well, I had I guess 5 years of Spanish in high school and a couple of years of French. Then when I went to Spain, I added. I took a Portuguese class. I lived in a residence owned by the Brazilian government. So it was mostly South Americans and a few Spaniards. But I remember one of the big things that hit me was one day it was raining out and I came down. There was a cafe there with alcohol and whatever you want. You could order a brandy, Alexander or whatever. I came downstairs and I was putting on my overcoat, and all the South Americans said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to class." They said, "But it's raining." I thought, "Oh, okay. I get the spirit of this." And then I finally get to the bar downstairs in the college. There are different colegios, different colleges within the university campus. And I went down there, and there's 2 nuns at the end of the bar.
This sounds like a lead-in for a joke. Okay.
No,
Totally.
it's true. Yeah. And I saw them. I thought, wow, I'm in heaven. I like this.
A place where the nuns can be sitting at the bar too, right?
Well, they're in most of Europe, not just Spain, but we tend to think of bars as something that's very dark and you sneak into, go through the back door so your neighbors don't see you or your employer doesn't see you. But they're all open and well lit, and the people will be sitting there in the light, and they'll send their 12-year-old up to the bar to get a refill, and it's no problem. It's just
different society, and the puritanical aspect of America has turned our bars into bars rather than pubs and taverns and the like places in Europe that you'll find where everybody's much more open about it.
Yeah, there's some on YouTube. I watch a lot of travel stuff because I won't be able to go to many places anymore, but it's travel cooking shows. That's my favorite.
Food and travel. What else can you need, right?
I know.
What made you become a monk? What made you decide to do that, to wake up one day and embrace that?
When I was very young, I decided I wanted to be... I got to know the LaSalle brothers, who are a teaching order, and they also had a winery in Napa, and it's now... the champagne cellars in St. Helena are now the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America.
Okay.
But anyway, they were. So I went and I was there for 5 years, and then I decided I didn't. Well, I started studying church history, and that did it. It's just like, okay, I can't pledge allegiance to this anymore. It's just too sullied. So I went out and just became a hippie and went to Europe and all that stuff. After many years back, I decided to, I remember. I was in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for about 30 years, in and out of there. I did 5 years in Samoa and a year up in the Marshall Islands. So that was a nice time. But then I started volunteering at the local federal prison. And they actually, this is many years ago, they actually had a Buddhist chaplain, but he was from a form of Buddhism where they don't use meditation. So he couldn't teach meditation. So he called us in, and I went in, and then I'd been talking to a guy here in Washington State, and he was leaving, or no, he was dying. He was dying. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, who's going to take your place? And he said, I don't know. And so I thought about it, and I thought about it. About 2 weeks later, I called him back, and I said, has anyone, interviewed or anything? He said, no. And I said, well, I'm coming at Thanksgiving time to visit family, so I'll try and schedule an interview then. And that's what I did.
Because I remembered in the past that you worked with the local prison doing
that's
Buddhist
right.
teachings.
Yeah.
And
I used to go around, the first part of that contract, I went around any prison in the state that had a Buddhist group. So it was like, just a traveling preacher. And so that's how that went. And the last place that was at was Constantine Avenue. What's the name of our prison here?
the jail.
Stafford Creek.
Stafford
Thank
Creek.
you. That's it. People often ask me, and maybe some of the rest of us, it's not like, why are you in Aberdeen? It's like, how did you end up in Aberdeen?
I've heard people say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you have to go through this explanation, and that's mine. That was the last place I was on a payroll.
Is Buddhism fairly well received in the prison? I mean, it's obviously the Buddhist teachings are very pacifistic.
Yeah, there. I think it was in Oregon. They did a very simple experiment. When inmates first come in and fill out all their paperwork, they're supposed to list a religious preference. And so they took that, and they went back for a couple of years to see how to count infractions, write-ups for bad behavior. And everyone thinks it's the Buddhists who would have won that prize, but it wasn't. It was the atheist.
Okay.
No, and that's a true.
That's interesting. I'm not sure. Well, I've always been of the opinion that atheism is a religion.
Yeah.
Because it takes I think it's an incredible faith to believe in nothing. Boy, I've had atheists get mad for me saying that, though.
Oh, yeah. I remember this cartoon. Who's that guy that does? I think it's Gay and Wilson does those weird cartoons, and the cartoon is of this huge letter N, and it's in Nancy, and these two kind of druid guys are standing up on a hill looking down at the big N, and everyone's bowing down to the big N, and one says to the other, "Is nothing sacred?"
Okay, I was thinking describing a cartoon as hard, but that's actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
We know how you got to Aberdeen. How you ended up in Aberdeen.
Right.
I have heard that one before.
Right.
How did you end up in
up here?
Aberdeen? When you look at Grays Harbor, I mean, what do you think? What do you think from a person's, from a monk's point of view, a Buddhist point of view here, or just a man on the streets here? What do you think the biggest problems in the county are?
Well, we have so many. It's hard to pick. I mean,
just pick a good one.
Healthcare, I guess, especially mental health care. I think there's a lot of very depressed people in our county, and a lot of kind of suicide attempts and that kind of thing. So I guess I would pick that as something that really needs to be looked at.
We've talked about mental health as issues in the past here, and Johnny and I on the show, and that it also directly correlates into issues of homelessness.
Right.
I mean, there's an incredible amount of, I don't know, it's just cruelty in the fact that most homeless people, I mean, the statistic information is that 95% either have alcohol or substance abuse or severe mental health issues, and yet for some reason we don't want to offer facilities to help them. Yep. Let's just throw money at and give them shopping carts and blankets or whatever.
And needles. And
whatever else, rather than just simply offering them what they need to actually help fix their lives. I mean, it seems to be, I think America in general has been weak on healthcare. There's been massive changes. I mean, in the 1960s, we had institutions that had 5 or 6 million people in them being treated, and now you're lucky if it's in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Now, it's my understanding JFK was the one that federalized mental health because his sister had problems, and so he thought the government.
The original propositions come from documents in the 60s. There were 2 of them that were put forth that altered mental health. Mm-hmm. But a big issue happened in the 70s when the federal courts ruled that you couldn't have work programs in mental health facilities where people could do the gardens or do whatever because they had to pay them. And then when they had to pay them, they couldn't afford it because there wasn't any money anymore. So people just started being dumped on the streets.
What are some of the standard beliefs of a Buddhist monk? Don't kill, don't cheat on people, don't steal. I mean, is it kind of the same thing?
It's a little different because certain things are elaborated more. Mm-hmm. For instance, the stuff about speech. In Buddhism, it's not just don't lie. Mm-hmm. There's 5 other parts of that, which is don't gossip.
Oh yeah.
Don't promote yourself while disparaging others.
Oh yeah. That takes away the whole political arena.
I was gonna say, doesn't that
right
pretty
there?
Much the case?
Exactly. Yeah. So that part's more detailed than in Christianity. Mm-hmm. But you can look in various, like I call them almost Christian texts, like the Gospel of Thomas.
Right.
Some that came from the Nag Hammadi finds and some that came from other finds. You see that Jesus was probably a disciple of John the Baptist, or certainly he was. And so he starts something new, which is the meal. John the Baptist has started baptism, basically, and Jesus is baptized by him. But then Jesus starts this other thing, which is do this in remembrance of me, the meal. And
where you get the Catholic sacrament from.
Exactly. Well, Catholic and a lot of high church stuff.
Yeah, Lutherans have version of it too.
Yeah, in fact, I think, I can't remember recently, but Lutherans and Catholics and a few other denominations have united and recognized each other's sacraments and each other's clergy and so on. So that's all good.
Oh, it is. It is good. I mean, the denominations, Christians can define. But I think what Johnny's asking more of the general teachings of the Buddha. That he, most people know about the pacifism and and living a world reaching to attain enlightenment.
Well, the first part is the Four Noble Truths. I like to call it the Four Ennobling Truths because it's a process. So the first one is not life is suffering. People say that, but that's not the translation. The correct translation is there is suffering. And that's hard to dispute.
Mm-hmm.
Life is suffering and joy.
Yeah, life is all those things. So suffering, then there's it's like a medical prescription. So there's suffering, there's a way out of suffering, is the next noble truth. The way out of suffering is the Eightfold Path, and the Eightfold Path begins with ethics, and it ends with mindfulness and meditation. So from the Buddha's point of view, he's not around to get everyone meditating. He's around to get people to clean up their act, to stop, all this other stuff that's that clouds. From his point of view, it clouds your mind. If you have a vow of not eating meat and you make your living as a butcher, then you've got built-in conflicts that will trouble your mind. So you go through all that first, and then the last two of the Eightfold Path are mindfulness and meditation. So it's a long process, and also much of that happens simultaneously, because as you begin meditating, you begin seeing more of your ethical conflicts. You get more precise about, yesterday when that guy came along and yelled at me, I should have done this, or I shouldn't have called him up.
We're on the air.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Called him something.
Starts with a J and ends with
Okay.
So it's a constant evaluation, a constant fine-tuning of your own ethical thoughts and behaviors. And the idea is that even though others can't see our thoughts, we still have to clean those up first, because those precede our speech. And so I've often thought, if I had something on my forehead like a runner on the news channel,
right,
that said what I was really thinking, that would straighten me out.
Or make you wear a hat, one of the two, right?
Yes. Oh, good idea.
I would say it's interesting, Scott, because have you heard of Jordan Peterson?
No.
Oh, he's a professor of psychiatry. He's gotten some notoriety recently. He wrote a book called The 12 Rules of Life, and I read it. And a lot of it's interesting because he talks about, suffering and dealing with suffering. I mean, a lot of his ideas, and I know Johnny's a fan of his. He's quite a brilliant fellow. I hadn't thought about it till you said it right now, that it almost has a Buddhist sort of motion in there, because he's a student. He's a psychiatrist, but he's been a student of history, and he's studied philosophies and the like also. So I mean, it's interesting that in a modern time, though, the only problem, and of course, our modern society is you said a word that no one wants to believe in, which is ethics. They don't seem to understand that you need to be ethical, and you need to treat. I mean, to use the Christian one, love your neighbor as yourself. Treat people as you want to be treated. Yeah. I mean, like I said, a lot of the philosophies, the strong, good philosophies, have that as a core. That you need to treat people as you want to be treated yourself, because we all are endowed, again, with something that is transcending our physical form. We all have a certain level of divinity to us.
I used to have a service liturgy, so that's the words and actions that you do for certain ceremonies. And I used to have the Beatitudes in one of those. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Because it's such a fine statement.
Blessed are the peacemakers, so they shall be called the children of God. Yeah, from Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's something like I said, there isn't really a lot of times when you look at most actual religions, when you look at the true philosophies of them, and they're not just shoved into the politics and the church gossips and the canon fighting the secular and all that. Most of the beliefs are actually fairly. They have a core that's very similar. I mean, I can find connections between Christianity, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism even.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's all over. I've just hit 3 big places in the world in doing that, but all of which timed in the same period.
Yeah.
So, Kobei Scott Whitney, I thank you for being here today. I found the conversation very enlightening.
Thank you, Stephen.
And let's have you on again sometime, and we'll try to solve all the philosophical and spiritual problems of the world.
Good.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics,
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
pop culture,
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
common sense in senseless times.